Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Beatriz Mourad, and today I'm joined by Sam Quattro.
Hello.
Delaney Stovall.
Hello.
And Michelle Anderer.
Hi.
This is the second in a series of discussions we'll be having about She-Ra while we wait for Season 2, which was recently announced to be coming out April 26th. Woo!
Woo!
Yay!
Yeah. That's soon. That's very soon.
And usually Netflix announces them the month or the week before. It's surprise, it's coming. And they are like, no, we are going to hype this up, which is amazing. Great news for us. But yeah, in the meantime, you guys can listen to all our previous coverage of She-Ra, including our Quattro podcast by subscribe. Yes, that was a plug from the podcast I hosted, by subscribing to our She-Ra specific iTunes feed or the Overly Animated YouTube channel. You can find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes, where we appreciate your star ratings, or search for Overly Animated on your favorite podcatcher. All right, so I want to start off this podcast. Oh, right. This podcast the topic is how She-Ra Season 1 handles queer representation. You know that because of the title of the podcast, so it's fine. So I just kind of want to start off by asking, how gay is She-Ra? And that very question
is this a number scale?
I mean, the thing is,
it
can be, but the problem is, the very wording is problematic. That was the first bullet point I created when making the outline. But but that's not what we're discussing. We're talking about queer representation. I feel like it's really important to start off by defining what we mean by queer. When we use this term, what are we referring to? So I kind of just wanted to go around and just ask you, when you say queer representation, what are you talking about? Because I feel like this is a term that people throw around and everyone has their own definition of it. So if we can kind of let everybody know where we're at, if that makes sense. Yes?
Yes.
That's a fair start.
It makes sense.
Okay. All right. So Sam, what do you mean? Okay, fine.
Go first.
Fine.
Let somebody else go first.
Fine. Michelle, when you say queer, when someone tells you queer representation? Okay, fine. Delaney, when you
No, I'll do it. It's just complicated.
I got it. Okay. So So, queer representation. So, I identify as queer, just let the record reflect. But, so queer representation, it's not just sexuality, it also has to do with gender, and so, queer. So, some examples would include, so basically when we say queer, that is it means not what we would say, quote unquote, normal. We should say not general. I say obviously normal. That's not the actual term we should use. That's how people use it, but that's not correct. I guess we should say not. I don't want to say status quo. It's different. It's different.
It's counter general culture.
Yeah, it's counter general. It's different. So in that sense, it has to do with there's cis, trans. So we're talking opposites here. So we're talking about heterosexual versus homosexual, bisexual, pansexual, and so those are sexualities. So that has to do with attraction and representing different kinds of relationships. That would involve queer representation. Women and women, and men and men, and you can have a character who's bisexual, and as long as you establish that and you say that and it's represented equally. Now that doesn't mean someone has to date a guy and date a girl, but it's just that idea of, you make it clear and you make it equal. Like that, you kind of on, if people watch Arrow, the character, who watched Arrow and then maybe now watch DC's Legends of Tomorrow, you have Sarah Lance. She is the perfect representation of a good, queer rep for a bisexual character. I believe she identifies as bisexual. It could be pansexual, but similar ideas here. And that's also a difference of wording. If someone who says I'm bisexual versus I'm pansexual. And then so we have, our relationships, that's sexuality. And then you also have to have gender. So, and it's not just, we're going to have male presenting, female presenting, but you also, you want non-binary. Also going back to the sexualities, asexual representation. And no, I'm not saying we should have all of these in one thing. I mean, that would be ideal, but I'm just saying these are examples of what would be queer rep. And then And then also, which I think I might have to argue with someone when we get, I'm looking at bullet points, but I'm bringing this up early, talking about, so also when we talk about gender presenting, so for example, I am a cis woman, and sometimes I might present more male in how I dress, how I act. And so that would be a thing too, would be gender presenting. And, people are like butch, femme, but that's, that's just another thing is also gender presenting versus, when we get into, transgender, there's a difference between presenting a gender and then other stuff too. Because, I might wear a dress some days or, that's, people, you can be non-binary, agender, all sorts of stuff. And then, of course, having transgender characters. So that would be another example of rep, and you have to make that clear, and it has to be not problematic, which that's another thing you have to talk about, is you doing it. So queer rep, it can't just be there. It also has to be done well and not be terrible. And by terrible, I mean offensive or shown negatively. Like, for example, would be having a villain be like, I'm gay. Okay, cool. The villain's gay. But then you find out they're evil because the main character didn't like them back. Like, for example, hopeful to God, this is not what's going on. But let's say that we find out that Quattro loves Adora. I mean, we obviously know she does, but let's say Quattro loves Adora, but we find out Adora is straight or whatever and doesn't like her back. And then she's more evil now because she's like, that's bad. Don't do that. That's so horrible. Like, you can't do that. That's another thing too, is we've had characters coded. This happens with race also. And generally this also happens with gay characters, bisexual characters, and this happens also with characters of color where they're the villain. And it's like, that's not good. If there are no other characters and your one representative character is evil, it's not necessarily the best. It's not the best. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover.
I'm like that. That's it. I don't have to add anything. Does anyone want to add anything?
I guess I would just say, like, for me, when I talk about queer representation, I'm normally talking about sexuality. But if you really want to talk about what queer is, I think, that's something that is anything outside of the very rigid kind of binaries that dominant culture has placed people into. Yeah. So that can be presentation, that can be identity, that can be mannerisms, that can be dress. It could be so many things. And like kind of existing anywhere on a spectrum for any number of kinds of ways you want to be a person outside of what is assumed to be you based on these very specific binaries. So like even like being a very like sweet-tempered like person who's mostly male identing and presenting could be a sense of like queerness in its own way in terms of it like queering being, dominant culture.
But then not but not being offensive, like not being like, for example, Bo, being like not making fun of Bo for being that.
So framing is like the extra step to make it like a positive thing, because otherwise, like when you were talking about, villains, Delaney, what immediately came to mind was just like, Scar in The Lion King is a very effeminate villain, and I don't think that's by accident at all. And it is really important to think about how like characters that are kind of queering like or queer coded in a lot of different ways.
And him in the Powerpuff Girls, very bad.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Or not, and like, what does that say to people who might want to be more open about their expressions and their identities? Like, are we letting them give them space to do that, or are we showing them these examples that are punished
and making fun of it?
Yeah,
right.
So, yeah,
totally.
Also, we probably need a blanket disclaimer here. Some people do not like the term queer.
Yeah.
It has been used for a very long time as a slur and as a word of discrimination and a word used to put us down. And I say us, me, who don't want to include everybody in the podcast if they don't want to be. But this is it's a good word. It's for us, for our purposes, it's a good word to use. It was a personal choice to use queer. And this is not meant to offend anybody. Some people don't like to be, for example, I'm fine identifying myself as queer. My girlfriend, not so much, which that's cool. I would never refer to her as such, but that's just a thing. Like, and, so just, this is what we're using. And it's just personal preference. And then, of course, there's also the importance of reclaiming language. So we're attempting to reclaim queer. But yeah, just disclaimer, sorry, don't mean to offend by saying it. We know it's, it can be triggering and...
Right, totally. Sam, do you want to add anything before?
I'm actually one of those people who isn't very comfortable with the word queer myself. It does have its uses for people, of course, who identify as such, and its uses when, I would say, talking about, community issues on the whole as an umbrella term, all that sorts of stuff. And that's like the situation in which I would personally use the word, if it's like somebody's label, if it's like the best word to use on the whole. But personally, I don't really like it.
Yeah.
That's just me. Anyway.
That's 100% fair.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming something that Delaney mentioned was that I feel like we were going to get into, and you kind of started talking about it when you talked about like gender presentation. So for me, queer representation is everything you guys have said, but there are certain kind of, like, for instance, Quattro in a suit for me is not queer representation.
Yeah.
Like,
I will say in on its own.
Like,
no.
on its, exactly. Like, her dancing with Adora and the tension there, that's something we can talk, that's something else. But
she dipped her.
Exactly. Like, she dipped her, and then Adora looked at her lips. I can confirm that, because I looked at that gif a lot of times.
Okay.
But her just simply, like, for instance, like, her wearing a suit to me is like, that's not queer representation.
Like, if it was just that.
If it's just that's not enough. But then, for instance, if we talk about Scorpia, and it's like she is not feminine, like, in terms of like her hair, in terms of like her body size, she's constantly like told her that princesses thought she was weird. So I'm like, okay, there's potential here for like a queer storyline, and in terms of how she's presented, interesting. But Quattro wearing a suit, that's not for me. So I don't know. So I just needed to like.
Okay, that's interesting.
There are like kind of, for me, it's like yes. But also, it's like we can't like get over.
Well, if we see more, like, if we see more of her, wearing things like that. For example, for me, like when me and my girlfriend get married at whatever point, like for me, it's a statement, stuff like that. For me, I prefer to wear what would be considered men's clothing. And a lot of times, it's a statement of how I feel. It's a statement of who I am, of how I want to present myself. And, a big thing for us is, like, I'm probably going to wear a suit when we get married. And that's the statement. Like, it's because I am who I am and we're gay. Like, and that's one of those things. So, like, I agree. A suit on its own, no. But we do, it's important to talk about gender presenting. And we also talk about, we grew up in a culture where we're like, oh, it's tomboy. And it's like, that's like, I identified as that term growing up. And I would maybe still identify with it. But then we also have to kind of, like, unpack a word like that and, like, talking about, like, it's different, and sometimes it's not used in a flattering sense. And so talking about, how Quattro is presented, if we see stuff further, like, again, we had, like, what, 10 episodes, 13, I don't even remember, 10 episodes? 13, who knows? Yeah. I watched some, I'm like, I don't know, 8 seasons are either 10 or 13 episodes. I have no idea which one. And to, we have to wait for a little bit more. Obviously it was the big prom episode, and like that was definitely a statement, but obviously we want to see more, and that was definitely in combination with the dip and the dancing. But so I agree, like, it on its own, no, like, don't be like, oh my god, this is gay because she wore a suit. But
well, I mean, Delaney, you've just brought up a really good point for why it is queering, though, because her being presented in a suit, the same as Scorpia, like rocking that dress, like they're doing things that you wouldn't expect women to do, or like based on how they look, and both ways are presented very positively. It's not like anyone on the show teases them about it. It's not that they feel unconfident in the clothes they're wearing. And we don't see this a lot. Pearl's like the only other character I can think of in a children's cartoon that wore a suit, and that was also very well celebrated. And I think in terms of the framing, it is something that's worth talking about. And I do think it is queering, in that it's queering our expectation of how a prom should look and how girls who go to prom should look. And in that case, like, I think it is queer.
And it was a good counter
in this general sense of queerness.
Right. And it was a good counter to Adora, like how we saw her getting dolled
Adora's
up.
what we expect girls, like quote unquote girls like typically to look like.
We knew Glimmer was going to do what she did. Like, it's Glimmer. And, that was a good counter. Like, we had the whole getting ready for the prom scene. And, of course, that was funny, too, with Adora, having her battle plan.
Yeah, she was
like, Adora, honey, calm down.
First time.
Right.
I mean, but at the same, look, but I don't know, Ketra I don't know. I personally still don't see that as queer representation simply because I feel if we're talking about wearing a suit and making a statement and doing what's unexpected and subverting it, it would be, say, during the wedding in Steven Universe with Ruby being the one to wear the dress and Sapphire being the one to wear the suit. And it's in a wedding, so it's much more of a statement. But for Ketra to wear a suit, I don't know, for me, that's not, I don't know, maybe it's because I have seen Cate Blanchett wearing various suits as well as Angelina Jolie and freaking out about it. But I mean, to me, that's not, we've reached a point in society, this isn't the 1930s and Marlene Dietrich is in Morocco wearing a suit and everyone losing their minds. That's not where we're at. We are past that point where suddenly it's no longer just, oh, they're wearing something that's typically masculine. It's no, this is, women can wear suits. It's one thing if it's at a wedding or something, but it's another thing. It's just at a formal event and they decided not to wear a dress. I don't know. I just feel like we've passed. Well,
I do feel like they did draw attention to it just in that. I mean, I agree. It's not, again, it's not the suit on its own, but I do want to say that it was obviously very purposeful, not just because, she's wearing a suit, but in that she was the only person there. Not Bo wasn't even wearing a full suit because he has to have his tummy out at all times. But, that was
to me was more queer, was having him wear a crop top. That to me
I feel like it's all in conjunction with each other, right? The suit on Quattro is as queering as Bo's crop top, which is equally as queering as a beautiful butch woman wearing a dress.
Because here's the thing, though, I don't agree with that because feminine women have been able to wear, and we're going back to the tomboy thing. Women have been praised for taking on. Still being feminine, but taking on masculine features, not features, but appearances on occasion, and still having that fluidity. But boys being sissies, that's always been a negative thing. So for me, Ketra wearing a suit is not as revolutionary as showing a butch woman in a beautiful dress, or showing a Bo wearing a crop top, because one of these has had a certain amount of privilege that just based on the fluidity that society has allowed them. Because people are praised for being masculine to a certain degree. You still have to be feminine, but you can be masculine to a certain extent. So for me, Ketra wearing a suit is not the same as, say, Scorpio wearing a dress or Bo wearing a crop top for the entire show. That to me, it's we don't see those other two as often as we do see feminine women wearing dresses. Wearing suits. That to me, that's one particular aspect where society has moved forward and the other two have not. And we don't see the other two as often. So to make them equal, to me, is a little bit, it's just not as, to me, it's not as radical. So, I mean, I stand by that.
I think that's very fair. And it's
in
true
summary, that Princess Prom is really gay.
Basically, taking everything else into consideration, absolutely. But
even if it is more acceptable to have more feminine presenting women wearing suits than, bonus crop top or Scorpion
Quattro is very feminine.
It's true. She has a very feminine
she's literally
body,
cats, but I mean,
but I think even if it is as not nearly as noteworthy as those other two things, I think it's still good to try to normalize that more so that it doesn't feel on a very special occasion you can wear a suit and get away with it if you're feminine enough. Because I think it's all kind of, does it really hurt anything to try to make that more normalized? I don't think so. And in that case, I'd rather see it than not. And I'm just saying.
And also we have to think of this in terms of a children's cartoon.
Yeah.
Because that would be the big thing.
I want kids to feel confident to wear suits. I guess that's how I feel about Quattro wearing a suit.
Well, because that's the other thing we have to remember in context, which is something I forgot when we were talking about Voltron, is that in context of this cartoon, this is geared at young girls, and they watch this super cool cat girl wearing a suit. That's pretty cool. It's good stuff. And that would be, I would say, countering expectations we were saying earlier. Again, we don't, and we can grade things, we can put it on a scale. And I do agree, like the suit on its own, not queer, which I understand that this is in general, this is a response to fandom and how people act and Twitter and blah, 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 all the nonsense as usual. Because of course, when you're gay and you see a woman in a suit, you literally cannot control your reaction. It's just, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Like it just happens. It's okay. But yeah, so basically in summary, Princess Prom was like ridiculously queer.
I agree with that point, Delaney. It's like, as we've been moving on in the world and seeing, the red carpet beauties wearing suits and stuff, that sort of thing becomes more and more quote unquote accepted. At the very least, it's not as, shocking or radical or this, that, and the other. But, in the world of children's shows, it still is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, it's still a great thing. And I think, maybe being an adult and seeing that, it's like, well, that's kind of old hat. I personally was taking a lot of issue with people saying, oh yeah, Butch Quattro, blah, 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 on Tumblr a lot.
Right, yeah.
Like
that
for me,
exactly like Tumblr.
Yeah, for me personally, I was like, well, I don't know. We'll see, blah, blah, blah. But, being a kid and seeing that has to be really cool, especially, the young kids who were like me growing up, who were tomboys. And
like Toph changed my life.
Yeah, like that has to be like good for them. And
especially in a show when you have a character like Glimmer. Not that Glimmer isn't the coolest thing ever, but like, you have to, when you end Scorpia, like you have these counters to things. It's important.
Yeah, and same thing with like Bo lacking his cummerbund and having the midriff bared. That sort of stuff is, maybe we're used to seeing it more as adults, consuming more media.
Like, I hope 10-year-olds aren't going to school and seeing people in crop tops, because I don't think you should be 10 necessarily wearing a crop top.
I think that's a uniform infraction most places.
Like, that's probably not okay, but like, but
it might really affect them as they get older.
Yeah, they know that that's a cool thing. Like, it's not just girls. Like, everyone can have a crop top. Crop tops are cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta get the airflow, guys.
Dude, like, look, let me just be me for a second and just say that K-pop male idols have started using crop tops, and it's the greatest thing ever. That's as far as I go. That's as far as I'll go with K-pop. Okay, I promise. Anyway, let's talk about sexuality. Let's talk about how this show is presenting itself and its characters in this kind of sexuality sort of way. I don't know how to, what's that word? Adapting the verb into making, anyway, point is, language doesn't fit. Something that's just so shocking to me about the show is that there's just no assumed heterosexuality. So that's why a lot of people have kind of grabbed on it to make it seem like it's, this is like the queer show. Like this and Steven Universe. Like this is the next thing coming up. Like this is meeting Steven Universe on its level and being like, yo, we're here, we're queer, it's great. Like GLAAD, it has been nominated by GLAAD for an award for outstanding kids and family programming, and it's all great. But if you actually just look at the numbers.
What's GLAAD again?
GLAAD is the gay, lesbian, like, what's that organization that's very much about like say for instance
NAACP?
Kind of like the NAACP but for the LGBT.
For those at home, if you did not know.
Yes, for those at home. But yeah, so something that's so interesting to me is how there's kind of this no assumed heterosexuality, so everyone just assumes it's queer. But if we just look at it, there's only one gay relationship in it.
Yeah.
And it's not even, I don't even want to call them side characters. They're side characters. They're so far in the periphery.
I didn't even notice them until somebody pointed them out.
Exactly. They're so far in the periphery. And they're the only like confirmed like LGBT couple. And then there is, I know that Adora's voice actress revealed that Bo has two dads, but that hasn't been shown in the show before. So
oh my god, I didn't know that. This is
he
so
does
good.
have two dads.
Yeah, he has two dads. But we haven't seen the show.
I can't wait to get off the podcast and tell my girlfriend this.
But what I mean is, like, that's the only thing we've seen. Like, we can say, like, oh, the Ketra Dora dance, and just based on everything that happened in Princess Prom, this is totally can be read as unresolved sexual tension between the two. Like, this is totally whatever. But at the same time, people can still negate that. That is still subtext enough that if someone doesn't want to see that, they're not going to see it. It's not explicit. So how do we kind of marry these two positions? How do we marry that, yeah, this is being celebrated as this queer show, but then it's, like, kind of not, because there's only really one gay couple. Like, how do we adjust to this? Like, is it enough for it to just be subtext?
Well, I would say, so it's I want to say it's subtext. I mean, yes, probably by its definition, it's subtext. But I think what's important here is the absence of the heterosexual baseline. So, because the important thing here is, like, even Mysticon's one of my favorite shows in the universe, which is, like, literally there's, like, 2 dudes and it's all girls and it's fabulous. You don't have, oh, boy, girl, they're going to get together. Like, you don't have that. That does not exist. So you could even, like, you know, even the Golden Trio in Harry Potter, you have, you know, Ron and Hermione. They're a thing. And so here, though, you know, I was a little worried watching Princess Prom that they were going to start doing that with Beau and Glimmer. But then you're watching it and you're like, oh, my God, they're so cute. They're such best friends. Look at this little trio. They love each other so much. They're such good friends. And they do that really well. And, you know, it's friendship, the power of friendship, great stuff. And there is never any real indication of this romantic, there is no straight romantic subplot. There's no, like, you don't even have a hint of it because it doesn't exist. Except for Mermista, except she is so tired
of Seahawk
that it almost doesn't count.
Well, and then Seahawk has his fanboy.
And he's so flamboyant.
Yes, he is.
Also, he loves Beau, so, like, I feel like...
And Beau loves him,
I feel like it's Beau loves him.
Beau admires him.
Seahawk is less, like, it's not... I don't think it's reached that point where he loves Beau, but Beau is definitely, like, fanboying over Seahawk every chance he has.
So, like, it's good. Like, so that's the thing. Like, the one we have, Mermista is so done with him that it doesn't matter. And then, on top of that, we have Beau, like, madly in love with Seahawk. And so... that's the thing. I think that's really why everyone has grappled onto the show. And I know definitely, like, why I have is, you know, we've also talked about, you know, like, there's a guy wearing a crop top the whole show. Like, come on. And then you have these characters who they're friends. And then you have all these there is not a dude. There's Beau. There's Beau and Seahawk. And that's it. It's like, where are the men? Who cares? They're not here. And you have all the princesses, and everyone's just like
for the princesses.
Exactly, there are no
princesses.
None. And the best part, and then you have, you know, She-Ra, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, the 8-foot warrior goddess!" Like everyone is constantly fangirling. So I think that's really the draw of this is the lack of straight romance, and it's not that there's a lack of romance because there's not. You know, we have that's the thing. We have Micah and Angela. But Micah's dead, and which, you know, you have to have a dead parent. Like, that's just how this works. But
it's just the rules.
It's just how it is. But the only other, you know, and of course, you know, hasn't been shown on the show, but you have 2 dads, and then you have, God, what are their names?
Natasha. Cinderella.
I knew one was Natasha, and I was like, it's something.
She's the net lady.
Right, the net lady. And it's literally my name. It's Natasha. And then you have... and so you have them, and that's what's great. So even your established relationships aren't straight.
I'm sorry,
because they aren't subtext. They're text. They're an actual couple. It's pretty clear. Yeah. Sorry,
I'm just still not over the Natasha name.
It's so good. It's so good.
It is in the show.
It's so good.
But no, yeah, I mean, totally, absolutely. For me, I just feel sometimes a little bit of, I feel like I guess it's just the degree of queerness. Sometimes people say, for me personally, I just feel like sometimes people are like, saying the show is more queer than it actually is.
People like to jump the gun, I think
exactly. That's why I was like, but why are we settling for this? Like, I just don't want us to settle, is my thing. You know, I'm just like, we still, like, the one couple is, like, super, super periphery. The actual things people can, the actual, like, main characters and their entire dynamic, just in terms of sexuality, can still be written off as subtext. People could still deny it. It's not explicit. So it's just kind of like, while yes, like, we can, like, see this and be like, this is, like, there's, like, it is all full of rainbows and it's wonderful. People could, like, you know, just see it and not, you know, because they're not aware of our culture. They can just, like, it can just pass their heads. So it's just kind of like, where do we draw that line with it being explicit and it being implicit? And when is that enough?
The thing to remember is this is She-Ra's first season, and I think I had a lot of those same fears coming out of Steven's first season, especially the first 26 episodes, because there's, like, a lot of hinting that goes on, but there's nothing concrete. But, like, we need to keep in mind, this is DreamWorks. Steven is still the most unabashedly queer show, like, out there for children. This is still I think this is a pretty worthy, like, you know, for 2018, this is a breath of fresh air. And I think in a lot of ways, this show is, you know, looking at the queerness of Steven and trying to use that to their advantage to push more things. I think for a first season, the fact that we even get a canon queer couple that is visually shown is a pretty big deal. It took Adventure Time till their season finale to finally commit to bubbling. I really think
they said verbally that they were together.
Yeah, so I think we really need to consider the fact that these are big companies with a lot of money on the line, and they still, for better or worse, have a big concern about how this is going to affect their markets. And again, this show I do not think would exist even in its current form if Steven hadn't paved the way and helped normalize it the amount that it did. Oh, absolutely. This is, like, very much like a ripple effect from Steven that we're able to get a show. You know, it's not you're right that it's not super gay when you really look at it, but I think given what it has to work with for 13 episodes in a first season, I think the thing that makes people so excited is there's so much potential here, right? There's so much potential for that queerness to become more overt and for characters to continuing to, like, you know, not live up to heterosexual expectations and to just kind of be themselves. Like, all of that to me is part of, like, the queerness of it. And because, like, it's such a strong season and this is the first one of who knows how many, I mean, that just, they have planned. It bodes very well, and I feel like if it keeps doing well, they can keep pushing more in. And I think it's not from a lack of trying on the part of the crew at any point. So
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you look at the people who are actually making the show, like, you know, they have, you know, the best of intentions in terms of community stuff at heart. It's just the question of how much will this big company and our distributor, etc., how far will they let this go? For me, at least, I think you can trace a line back to Korosami happening.
Definitely.
And then go from, you know, show to show to show to show. I think...
And from Korosami, we have come so far.
So far.
From one handful, oh yeah.
And it's a good thing that we've come so far, but we still have, like, a long way to go. And I agree with Beatrice. I was kind of frustrated, at least when I saw the GLAAD nomination. I was like, was there that much...
that was something that was shocking to me.
Was there that much happening in GLAAD? Like, in GLAAD? Was there that much happening in She-Ra to get the GLAAD nomination? Albeit GLAAD is known to nominate some, like, very minimal things. Anyway, and I was back thinking, well, you know, there was that one couple... And you can perceive the actions, looks, general demeanors of some people. But it still is what it is. And, like, I believe in the crew and the writers and Noelle Stevenson. They're not going to, like, do us dirty here.
Oh, no.
Right.
Yeah.
How worried are you of DreamWorks, though? Because, I mean, I did talk about a little bit in the Quattro podcast. But, you know, like, DreamWorks, like, they did have this kind of, like, groundbreaking kiss with Shiro, but on Voltron. But at the same time, it's like, it was with a character it was at the last episode, so they pulled a bubbling there. And it was with a character that, like, they had no development with this character. And the previous was it the previous season where they basically did the bury your gays trope and killed his boyfriend? Yes. So it's kind of like, given DreamWorks' track record, I mean, granted, it's not fair to compare one production to another because it's different. I'm assuming it's different teams and it's a different showrunner and all that stuff. But given the higher ups, like, how much can we expect from She-Ra going forward? Like, is this going to be something like, you know, like, you're absolutely right that, Michelle, that Steven Universe paved the way for this show to even exist. And I feel like Steven Universe paved the way for, like, bubbling to happen, period. So it's just kind of like, even if it wasn't the word, the fact that we got it so explicitly, I think it's thanks to Steven Universe. So how much are we willing to, how much do you think DreamWorks is willing to give the crew?
Well, they gave us a kiss, which is, like, we didn't even get a Korosami kiss.
That's very true.
And so what I would like to say is, like, one, the what's so amazing about She-Ra, and I think the reason everyone's so excited, is this is an incredible foundation.
Yeah.
To have, like, Princess Prom. I know we just talked about it, but, like, there is so much stuff in Princess Prom. And just, you know, sprinkled throughout. And I think I am much more comfortable with She-Ra and its direction after having watched the Voltron. After the Voltron finale, like, you know, given how season 6 happened, and that was not great. They absolutely straight washed it as hard as they could. And then we get a kiss. Now, again, it wasn't a character anybody knew, and they didn't show the buildup of the romance. But that was a big deal for DreamWorks, especially, this is the same company. If y'all did not know, Gobber in How to Train Your Dragon is gay. That is a confirmed thing. Oh. However, we'll have to see in the third movie, which, oh my God, the trailer looks so good. But DreamWorks would not let them say anything or have any hints about it. And so to now go from that to a kiss, yes, it wasn't that great. But that's the other thing, you had Nickelodeon. Like, granted, Nickelodeon did everything they could to murder The Legend of Korra. Like, everything they could. But, I mean, I think we have such a strong foundation, and I mean, this is some good stuff that we're getting from She-Ra. You know, again, it's not explicit in some cases, and it's definitely, we shouldn't settle. This is not what, like, we want more, but I definitely think that, you know, times are changing, and unfortunately, that's the thing, it's slow. I mean, Korosami happened in 2014, it is 2019, but I do have high hopes for She-Ra, and I do think that the Voltron kiss was a good sign ultimately for the show, and just the strong foundation of, you know, the queer is here. It might not be as much as we'd like, and it might not be as explicit as we hope it will become, but it's here. And I think that's really what's so important, is to have a show that it's like, it's not explicit, but, like, it's steaming with it the way Steven Universe does. You know, it's an undercurrent. It's just there. It's kind of like, it really is the kind of the atmosphere of the show. I honestly think we're going to have queer up in She-Ra. That'll be the DNA of the show, and that the same way it is in Steven. And I'm really excited about it.
And, yeah. I would add, I think one thing that She-Ra probably has in its favor that Voltron doesn't is that the queer couple canon characters are pretty much side characters, whereas I get the impression She-Ra was a main character, right?
Yes, She-Ra was a main character.
So that's, like, its own thing too. I think it's a lot less concerning to have non-main characters being able to express that queerness because there's not as much at stake for them as for main characters, which brings up another interesting thing because, you know, Korra is queer, and there's a really good chance that Adora is also queer, and she is the main character of this show. And I think that's one of the things that, if the crew really is doing their damnedest, and I think they are, to make it as clear as possible in ways that don't, like, you know, alert the executives, and maybe they do it more with, like, eye glances and gestures and hand-holding. There's so much hand-holding between Quattro and Adora on both sides in this entire season. I think we could reach a point where Adora can be comfortably queer, but I do think it's one of those things that, like Delaney was saying, things are more open now. The culture around this kind of thing is changing over time, but I think it's always going to be a constant negotiation. And but I do think, like, again with Steven, like, I don't think there could have been a wedding in season 2 of Steven. I think that's something they really had to build up to over time and prove that, like, look, this show's doing really well. We have really good ratings. Our fan base is huge.
Too, that other networks look at.
Yeah, so if this show can be successful on its own terms, there's going to be a lot less pressure to try to change it from outside executives. And they're going to give them more and more control of their own thing because, like, well, you know, it's weird or whatever. It's not the normal thing, but it's doing really well and people seem to like it. So I guess.
And we buy toys.
Yeah. So, like, I think time will tell, and it'll always be a negotiation. But I think they seem. I get the vibe, the way I feel like Delaney does too. That this crew is trying very hard to set a foundation that is very refreshing for a lot of people, and a lot of that has to do with the queerness that they're plugging into, like, everything they possibly can, not just in sexuality, but just in character types and, you know, presentation. So I think that's what makes me really excited. Like Delaney said, like, it's a foundation. It's a first season, but I mean, maybe those 4 seasons will turn to 6. Like, who knows? This show, I think it says a lot that we're getting a season so quick. I feel like that's a decision Netflix is promoting because they understand that there is, like, this blossoming fan base on their hands and they want to feed that, and they're being really smart about it. So that gives me hope that they have a lot more faith in She-Ra now that it's actually premiered and done well. So also, I'm excited. I'm excited for the future of the show.
But I would like to add, and, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a difference. Voltron, you know, the same crew worked on Korra. There's a difference between being an ally and being so passionate about something because it's who you are. And I think that might be the driving thing, that difference between Voltron and She-Ra. Like, you know, I do know, like, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know necessarily the complete personal details of the, you know, crew that worked on Voltron. But, you know, there's a difference. There's a big difference between having creators and showrunners and animators and storyboard artists who, you know, identify as LGBT and versus, you know, oh, we know this representation is important, but that's not why we're making the show, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Right. No, totally. Because then you'd be emphasizing, like, you know, characters building up their relationships, no matter if they get a kiss or not, and just, like, laying that kind of very.
Which I'm not saying Voltron didn't push really hard, but there's a difference between it's not like that being like queer rep was not the DNA of Voltron.
Right, okay, right. I haven't seen, but I believe you.
I mean, I think it's also
it's about mech robots. You don't. It's about mech robots.
I think it's also important to, like, point out, like, this isn't She-Ra versus Voltron type of thing we're doing. No. And it's also very important to say, like, unfortunately, when it comes to queer representation, if a show is directed towards girls versus directed towards boys, right, the leniency is also different. Like, unfortunately, with Voltron, like, that's why She-Ra's kiss was that groundbreaking, because not only was it a male-male kiss in a celebratory way, but it was all in animation, but it was also on a show, like an action-heavy show that was being marketed towards boys, which is something you never would you expect it to see. So also, we have to take that into consideration.
Yes, that is definitely, I was also thinking that was the leniency. It's different for, which that's also another groundbreaking thing Steven has done. Like, you have a male lead, and they're like, you don't even know how to classify Steven Universe. It's just,
I mean, it's just like Steven and Bo are just fighting toxic masculinity. At one point, like, Steven was on his own fighting toxic masculinity, and then here comes Bo being like, Steven, like, let's work together to do this because this is too big for just you. We need to tackle it, and it's so great. It's the most wonderful thing. But yeah, so speaking of the future of this show, what do you guys hope to see for the season 2? Like, the season that's coming. I'm not talking about 4 seasons and, like, the last episode. I'm talking about, like, what do you hope to see in terms of queer representation on season 2?
Glimmer and Adora go on a date.
Oh, yes! I would love that. Oh, my God.
Like, I know y'all had your Catch Your Door podcast.
Dude, I'm like the biggest multi-shipper. You're fine.
No, for real.
I mean, obviously, Catch Your Door happens. Like, it's cool. But, like, Glimmer and Adora are, like, my OTP guys. Like,
Glimmer and Adora be an actual healthy relationship, that's why I ship it both ways.
And
Because,
I
like,
just
well,
need
if I
to
want
talk
Adora to
about
be happy,
when they're in the spa and Glimmer has her head on Adora's shoulder, like my soul left my body for like solid 10 minutes.
I mean, I will say, and I stand by this theory, the person who's going to get through to Ketra is going to be Glimmer.
Oh,
like, I stand by that theory. Like, she is the one who's like, they are, like, everyone's like, oh, like, Ketra and Adora are each other's foils. And it's like, no. Ketra's foil is Glimmer. And she's the one who's going to get through to her.
I agree with you.
That is, I'm not going to get too far into that. Sam, what do you hope to see in, like, season 2?
I hope that Scorpia will write a very touching love letter to Quattro.
Yes. And reads it, right? She has to read it out loud.
She has to read it, she has to illustrate it.
Yeah.
And Quattro's like, okay, thanks. And then Scorpia is like very sad about it, and then her and Entrapta bond.
Okay, I was waiting for this part.
Ooh.
They bond over this I don't know, rejection, I guess. I don't know who Entrapta has been rejected by. But they bond over
her friends technically left her.
That makes me so mad. Can we have a podcast about how unfair that is? And I hate this trope.
But also, like, they didn't know. They thought she died. So, I mean, it's like,
I hate this trope.
Also, like,
sad.
Makes me so mad. I hate it.
Miscommunication, man.
What's the place that's like the horror zone or the
horde?
Yeah, where are they?
What's it called? It's called the Fright Zone.
The Fright Zone, yeah. Something really
whatever
bad.
Stupid name it is.
You know, there's probably like a gay bar or something there, and then Scorpia and Entrapta, they go.
And they serve like acid. Just drink acid.
Yeah, and they just have a good time, and they're friends. And then Quattro does whatever, and then Scorpia deflects. So that's my season.
And I need an undercover episode. I don't know why they're undercover, but they're like undercover for like the death metal princess. And they have to like pretend to be dating to get into the bar or something stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care who it is, but I need it to happen.
More shenanigans in season 2.
Yes.
And we should just write fan fiction.
Oh, and Bo. Well, I want Bo to have a boyfriend, but we don't need more men. But like, I'm cool with Bo having a boyfriend.
A boyfriend who only appears like once every 10 episodes. How about that?
Okay. Cool,
check in with him.
Yeah, I have a boyfriend. He lives in Canada, and
does Canada exist?
Canada exists, and
just
of course,
just the She-Ra version of Canada. It's really cold.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was just thinking of like what it would be called. I couldn't just be called Canada. It would just be and like, they just don't mention it's out of place. It's just straight face. They're just like, oh yeah, he's in Canada, and we're just not going to talk about it. But yeah, Michelle, did you mention anything that you hope to see?
I want to see the princesses work together and to fight off the horde like on a larger scale. I think that's something, because just seeing them figure out how to work together on a day-to-day basis could fall apart fat.
Like just like raids. I want more raid episodes.
Yeah, I want
this to be a travel journal.
I feel like they don't know each other that well. Like, I don't think the main team know the princesses. I don't think the princesses really know each other that well. I want to see some development there because I want to be more invested in some of these princesses.
Yeah,
especially
like movie
icebreakers. Yeah, movie night. I like movie night.
Sleepovers.
Sleepover. There has to be an episode, please.
Also, like more Adora and Glimmer, more Adora and Quattro. I want to see Quattro get way more evil, way more powerful.
No, I don't want this.
I want it. I think
she already got really evil. She tried to kill her. When she let her go, I was like, I had to take a break.
This is the origin of their whole rift, but now the rift has to grow exponentially. That's what I predict. And I'm so ready for it. It's gonna be so tragic and fascinating, and so many feels will still be there.
We have to keep being mean to Shadow Weaver because she sucks.
Oh yeah, Shadow Weaver's like, I don't want, like, I know she's got stuff going on, but like she was awful to catch her for so long, and I can't forgive her for that. She
deserves it.
She's not a nice lady.
No.
I will say, for me, this is just complete fan fiction. I don't think I'm gonna get it.
That's literally what the point of all of this is fan fiction.
But all I want is the princesses just getting together and just gushing about She-Ra. Just being like, but her arms, no, but her hair, but no, but her smile. Like, I just want them to be like, just to unanimously agree how gay they are for She-Ra, and like have like Adora just not like either like, you know, because Adora's not like, she's a little dense. Adora's like, she's adorable, but she's like a little dense. She doesn't.
Is it a little? It's a lot.
It's a lot. She's a lot. I wanted to be nice to her, but no, she's very dense.
Nice.
She's a Hufflepuff. She's very dense. And
She's
so I just want her like with Bo, like being like, let's play with Horsey. Sorry, what's his name? What's Horsey's name? Oh God,
Swiftwind.
Swiftwind. Sorry, Swiftwind. He just got very insulted by me. So there, I don't know. Her and Bo are with Swiftwind, like doing something, and then all the princesses just gather, being like, let's like get down to like this thing about She-Ra, because we all need to talk about our feelings about her, because this is not okay.
No, we always need more She-Ra fangirling.
Can we just get all the She-Ra fangirling?
I need another one of She-Ra, like, just carrying a wagon and being like, I'm so strong. Like, I need that.
That was such a Korra move, also.
Yeah.
It was so stupid. It's my favorite.
So wonderful.
I mean, it was just great. Anyway, I think that does it for us. Is there anything else you guys want to add before I close out?
I'm so excited. Like, when they announced it, I, like, died.
I know. I still can't get over it.
Too.
I can't get over the fact that they announced it so early. Like, that to me is just that just shows that they're just so...
They're ready. They were like, hit the button.
It bodes well. It bodes well.
Bodes well. Like, I don't know about DreamWorks, but Netflix, who's like, they're always super hush-hush. Like, the fact that they're doing this, they are super confident in
They
the
never announce anything, ever.
It did get picked up for like 50-something episodes in the beginning, though, right?
No, totally. And also, like, in terms of just a vote of confidence in DreamWorks, like, they got Noelle Stevenson when she was 24 to start working on this, which is a huge kind of vote of confidence.
How old is she now?
She's like 27?
Oh,
wow.
I know.
So unaccomplished.
I know.
Same, though.
All right, look,
Noelle.
Let's remember, we cannot compare. You can't compare yourself and where you're at in life to someone else. Your time will come. You just need to focus on your own journey. It's fine.
But we can worship her on the side.
But we can totally worship her. Like, that's what I mean. It's like, not only is it vote of confidence on Netflix for announcing the second season, but DreamWorks like also invested in and took a chance with her. So also we have to like applaud that. The fact that they were able to take that chance.
We're going to do a little footnote here. GLAAD stands for Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation.
There you go.
I looked it up. You're welcome.
Thank you. I think that's a good way to end it. So yeah.
Knowledge.
Yes, knowledge. Great knowledge to drop. You can find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. You can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Jamie, aka Mailman. And thanks as always to our Patreon executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, and Hugh. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.